Welcome to Not the Top 20 podcast. Sky Bet League 2 1 to 24s for the 25-26 season, predicting the most unpredictable of all three Sky Bet EFL leagues.
You say that, but we picked last year's winner, Doncaster, although second place pick, MK Dons, came 19th.
Yeah, there we go. It's not going to be easy, this. Before we get into our selections, a big announcement.
Yeah, for the 25-26 season, we are partnering with the title sponsors of the EFL. Welcome to Not the Top 20, brought to you in association with Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. The partnership will help take NTT20's EFL coverage to the next level, and will also take us on the road.
Yeah, because the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund is a joint initiative between Sky Bet and the EFL, and it awards grants to EFL club charities to spend on a wide range of community projects and initiatives. Launched in 2023, the fund has already given away over £2 million as part of a £6 million commitment over 6 seasons.
We'll be travelling around the country to shine a light on some of the amazing initiatives made possible thanks to the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund, and we cannot wait to get on the road.
Our regular content won't change one bit, the same EFL coverage that you've enjoyed for the best part of a decade, starting, as always, with our 1 to 24s. Here's League 2.
So someone always has to finish 72 out of the 72 in the EFL, 24th in League 2. And this time around, it's Newport County. And in a way, they're a hard team to assess because when we're looking at the teams going into this coming season, you have to look at the back end of last season or last season as a whole as a pointer, because often transfers can be over-egged in terms of how much impact they make.
Amen to that.
And we'll hear us talking about a lot of transfers in the next couple of hours. But in Newport's case, last season, and in particular the back end of last season, yes, they just about achieved safety in League 2. But the underlying numbers were really, really alarming. They were projected as per the XG ratio as the worst team in League 2 over the course of the campaign. From the beginning of February onwards, they were giving up nearly 1 goal in terms of XG per game to their opposition. And that performance level cannot really be sustainable. Now, there are a couple of mitigating factors here where they've changed a manager. Nelson Jardim moved on at the end of the season. I think it's quite hard to say that he did a bad job considering that he kept them up. But obviously, if numbers are alarming, then moving on from your manager maybe not be the worst thing. David Hughes comes in, who's someone that we know very little about beyond the fact that he's had a really impressive youth coaching career. He's coached in academies. He kind of came through Welsh football, having had an okay career in the EFL. He went at Shrewsbury in their academy, at Cardiff in their academy, all the way up to Manchester United. And he joins Newport County from being in the Manchester United setup. We don't know if he's going to be a good manager. We can assume that he's probably going to be quite good at youth development, but that doesn't necessarily in itself always equate to being able to steer the relegation favourites to safety. In terms of recruitment, I think Matt Smith is probably one of the standout bits of business in League 2. He's a brilliant footballer, a really good technician, someone that I'm quite surprised that Newport County were able to attract. Jed Gardner is okay. Nick Zanev has shown in the past that he's a capable keeper for the level. And Jordan Wright comes in as well to compete with him. But it's quite a weirdly bloated squad. Normally when you're looking at teams towards the bottom end of League 2, you think might struggle, it's because they're so thin. There are over 30 players listed on Transfermarkt in Newport County's first team squad next season, and it's hard to really see where the talent is. It's hard to really understand why they're going to improve on last season, and they're going to have to by a stretch. So it comes with caveats. It comes with the fact that maybe David Hughes will be something of a genius and they will improve, but I'm struggling to work out why they'll improve off the back end of last season. If they don't, they're in for a long season. Yeah,
and I have to be honest, I really hope that we're wrong here. I really want Newport to go well. They are massively up against it from a budgetary point of view. Hugh Jenkins took over ownership of the club from the fans, and he's been very explicit about his approach. And part of the approach is trying to build a really clear identity that the fans can connect with and be proud of, and a lot of that comes in the form of signing Welsh players, sometimes from the Welsh Premier League, and there's been examples of that this summer. Often those let go by Cardiff or Swansea or loanees from those clubs, and I like the idea of that approach, and I want it to work, and I hope that Hughes is a good fit for it. But there's too much hoping at the moment as we sit here. And this is always in the context of the other teams in the league as well. 23rd place, Cheltenham Town. We had them to go down last season and they did not do that. So maybe some hope for Cheltenham Town fans there. They finished 15th. It was a bit of a weird season. They made a really poor start. We felt like our prediction was looking pretty good. Then they had a solid middle of the season and a really bad end to it. Mike Flynn's their manager, former Newport County manager, of course, took County to the playoffs twice in League Two. This is his his 4th EFL job, all of them at League Two level. So he, perhaps more than any manager, knows this level right now. They've lost a couple of key defenders in Stubbs and in Bradbury from last season. They're clinging on, I would say, to those that I would consider to be their 3 sort of best prospects and best players, maybe in Arkell Jude Boyd, in Ethan Archer and in Jordan Thomas. But all of them subject to transfer interest. And with Cheltenham, they are also up against it budget-wise. I understand that there's a potential takeover on the horizon, and that would be something that the fans look very positively about, but it's not gone through at the moment. And I think if it does, it's still going to be too late to massively impact their squad building this summer. The squad as it is really poor, I'm afraid, for this level, as I see it. They've brought in Robbie Cundy, Lee Angol, and a youngster on loan from Bristol City, and Tane Anderson. They've got a group of experienced players in Joe Day, Harry Pell, Scott Bennett, Young and Kinsella in midfield. But overall, this is a poor squad. They were pretty poor defensively last season, and they struggled to create chances. And I think the squad is getting worse. And I don't think Mike Flynn is a miracle maker, sadly. So maybe if a takeover happens, they can impact things this window. If not, the January window, it can sometimes be too late, as we saw with Carlisle last season for that. So I think they may struggle to compete. Cheltenham Town, in our eyes, relegation candidates with Newport County. And now everyone else is safe. But I don't think this next team will be happy about 22nd.
Well, I mean, you say that. This is kind of part of it. Shrewsbury Town, we've got in 22nd, who have just been relegated out of League One. And we've seen in the last couple of seasons that there is quite a well-trodden path from relegation from League One into the National League. We've seen Carlisle last season, who have pretty wealthy owners who put quite a lot of money behind Carlisle in League Two. They went down. We've seen Forest Green Rovers, who, again, with Dale Vince, are not one of the poorer clubs in the league, and they went straight back down again to the National League. And with Shrewsbury, there were rumours of a takeover for a long period of time. Those haven't come to fruition. We have a chairman and owner who has spoken about his struggles to fund the club successfully. And right now, looking at the squad itself and the transfer business, it feels to me like a squad unlike the ones that have gone before them, where they're unable to really recruit the level that they need to build a squad capable of being competitive at League Two level. Now, their manager is Michael Appleton, who is a manager that I adore and that I rate incredibly highly. And I worry about this job for him for a number of reasons. Firstly, the success he had at Oxford and the success he had at Lincoln was thanks to him being, I would say, almost unparalleled in terms of working with elite young players. He's incredible at recruiting loanees, whether it's Brennan Johnson or Morgan Rogers or John Lundstrom. These players who go on to have careers at the highest level, he's very good at working with them at a young age and turning them into really good players. And right now at Shrewsbury, that doesn't really exist. They brought in Ellie Harrison from Manchester United, who's a young keeper who is seemingly very good. But apart from that, the recruitment is Sam Stubbs, who was brilliant on loan last year at Cheltenham. Will Boyle, who we haven't seen play much since his move to Wrexham. Tom Anderson. These are guys who are effectively kind of cloggers. And the way that Appleton
we call them
teams,
big, meaty centre-backs on this podcast, not cloggers.
But these are players who I don't really see being great fits for the way that Appleton likes to play. And I see the squad is not necessarily as a great fit of how Appleton likes to play. And I don't know if, I think managers are often horses for courses, and I'm not entirely sure this is the right course for Appy. And it wouldn't surprise if things don't go particularly well. I also think there's probably an expectation issue. As you say, Shrews fans are going to hear this and think it's, a gross underestimate. It would be a terrible result for them if they were to finish here and everything else. But in my mind, if Appleton is able to take this squad and make them into a cohesive unit that's able to finish clear of relegation, I think he's done quite a good job. Yeah. Whereas the perception will be that he hasn't. So of all the relegated teams from last year, they seem quite obvious to me to be the ones to be worried about. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if they do go down again.
Here's a stat. In the last 3 seasons in League Two, that's 12 teams that have come down from League One across 3 seasons. 10 have finished in the bottom half.
There you go.
2, as you mentioned, Forest Green and Carlisle, relegated, double drop. Only 2 of 12 have even finished in the top half. It is this insane like gravity that seems to exist for League One relegated teams. And I have a few theories as to why, and we'll probably get into those at the start of the season on the Monday pod. But we must move on. 21st for us is Crewe Alex. Now, again, a bit like my Cheltenham bit, it's worth saying that we've underestimated Crewe, certainly when they made the playoffs under Lee Bell in the 23-24 season, slightly last season, albeit they dropped like a stone, tanked at the second half of last season and finished 13th in the end. Crewe and MK Dons were the worst teams in League Two from the 1st of January onwards, and MK are now favourites for the title. Crewe very much not that. Bell's under a lot of pressure because it was so bleak in the second half of last season, and I think a lot of fans are struggling to have the vision of him dragging it back again. And I'm a big skeptic as well, not necessarily about Bell himself, because I think we are too quick to forget great jobs that people do, as he did in that playoff season. But I don't think that sort of campaign is going to be easy to repeat or reconjure, if you like. It's a team that I don't think over a long period of 3, 4, 5 years has recruited well at all. And if over the course of 3, 4, 5 years you are a net negative in recruitment, you drop like a stone in this pyramid because a lot of teams are better at it. Crewe are so reliant on the success rate of their loanees. And last season, they had a pretty high success rate of their loanees, and their mid-table finish, I think, slightly reflected that. But I don't think that is a very good way to base your success or otherwise in recruitment. They have, to my eyes, a poor squad. Too many either injured or injury-prone senior professionals. Of the 16 players that played the most minutes for Crewe last season, 7 have left. 2 of them in Bogle and Zach Williams seem likely to leave, still up in the air. 2 of them are injured long-term, and 2 of them are missing the start of the season with injuries as well. So that just leaves, of the 16 players that played the most minutes last season, Mickey Demetriou, what a legend, Max Sanders and Lewis Billington.
Almost the most one-man team, and their one man is a defender. Like, it's kind of rare, like the biggest goal threat. Best defender, best player.
I was going to say, of all the players to be reliant on, a centre-back that gives you sort of 7 goals a season and 5 assists with his long throw is not the worst thing in the world. As we record, they've brought in 5 or 6 players. Sam Waller in goal. Josh March from Harrogate will play up top. Hard-working striker, doesn't have a great goal return. Reece Hutchinson, the left-back from Sligo. Tommy O'Reilly's an interesting one. Talk about loanees, from Villa. This guy's meant to be a premium talent, certainly for League Two level, but struggled at various loans last season. Crewe could be a good fit for him. We know that in a dream scenario, Crewe do look to play football, be technical, get technical attacking players on the ball, but that didn't really happen last season. On the positive side, I always want to celebrate clubs with strong academies, and particularly those who really put their faith in young players and give them a route into the first team. And when it comes to Crewe, that's always the case, right? It's what defines them as a club, and I love it about them as a club. Holacek and Tabner and Zach Williams are good examples of academy players who became key players last season. Now they need another group, really. I want to see Billington, but then Owen Lunt and Callum Agius really develop into key first team players, and they have a good track record of that. Then it's players like Lancaster, needs to get back and fit and get back to the same level as last season. Tommy O'Reilly, will he be good? Will he impact games? It remains to be seen. I just think it could be quite a tough start, and given the atmosphere around the club and certainly between the fan base and Lee Bell, potentially a managerial change. And if that does happen, so much hinges in a club's season on how successful or not that initial managerial change is. I just don't think it's a very good squad. Crewe 21st. Harrogate 20th. They're second favourites for relegation, and we don't necessarily see it like that. Harrogate came 18th last season. They had pretty bad underlying numbers, especially struggled in attack, where previously they'd been quite good and quite vibrant at this level. Simon Weaver, their manager, is the longest serving manager in professional football in England. His dad is the chairman, of course, and this is a real, they're just synonymous with the club. Harrogate are the Weavers and vice versa. They've lost a few players, none of them hugely significant, I wouldn't say, given that they weren't a great team last season, and they've been quite front-footed in refreshing the squad, much more so than they were this time last summer. I think maybe they suffered from a bit of staleness last summer, and I don't see that necessarily this time out. At the back, they've added Tom Bradbury, Bobby Faulkner on loan, Lewis Cass as well, versatile right-sider. Midfield, Jack Evans. In attack, Mason Bennett, Sean Mikulski, who scored goals in the National League last season. Reece Smith, who's been someone we've been waiting to step up from the National League for quite a while now. And they've got that old guard as well. Your Belshaws, your Muldoons, your Burrells. Anthony O'Connor signed a new contract, which is huge for them. And I think, sneakily in January, I don't normally like January transfers much. I think it's hard to get quality starters that impact things straight away. But in Bryn Morris and Fox in midfield, I think they basically made their midfield about 5 times better immediately. And they did finish the season stronger with those 2 starting games. So I need to see their attack add more and be better and improve the output on that front. But, they are second favourites for relegation, and we don't think that's where we have them. So 20th for Harrogate.
Next up are a side in Barrow in 19th. And going into this process, you and I do the same thing. We comb through every single team and all of their transfer business and how they got on last year and everything else. And sometimes you go into it with an idea of how you're going to feel about a club, and then you do the work and it's completely different to what you thought it was going to be. And Barrow are that for me, where Andy Wing came in partway through last season.
Thought you'd be all over the wingification of Barrow.
Appy down in 22nd, Wingy in 19th. I'm just showing I'm not biased.
You're not biased.
He came from Solihull Moors and did an incredible job. Not only did their results improve, but in the XG ratio table, they were 4th from February onwards, early February. So showing that once that transfer window closed, he had built a side that were really, really effective at both ends. And there are quite big buts. A couple of key loanees. Aaron Presley left, who was a kind of physical presence for them. He didn't score many goals. Ben Whitfield, who they got back on loan from Burton, played a big part. But more importantly, their midfield has basically just been ripped out. They've been gutted of their engine room. Robbie Gotts, Cian Spence and Dean Campbell all moved to League One, all stepping up a league, showing just how important, not only did they perform well, but they've been seen as League One players effectively. And Emil Akwa, who kind of frustrated at times, has played a lot of minutes. He's gone to Dundee. Theo Vassell, another player who's been released at the end of his contract. These are, I would say the spine of their team, a lot of minutes in that side. It's not always the worst thing to have to rebuild, but when you look at the transfer dealings, it doesn't strike me. I've sat here so many times talking about Barrow 124, saying there is a misconception about Barrow. They're seen as a minnow, but actually they have a decent budget. They invest well. This looks to me like the beginning of a shift in that, where you look at the players they brought in, the ones who kind of catch the eye, who we know a fair bit about. Raheem Harper, who we know was a brilliant talent, but he's gone through Burton, he's gone through Port Vale, he now turns up at Barrow. It feels like the impact that we hope that he would have. They're another club hoping that he can refine that kind of form. Tyler Walker, once a starlet striker at various clubs on loan from Nottingham Forest. He went back to Lincoln, couldn't make it work there.
They're just signing 2016 wonder kids.
Well, yeah, it's been
in
like,
2025.
It's been like 2 or 3 years since we've seen Tyler Walker do anything, and it feels like these are the kind of signings where it's like, well, let's take a chance, and in the hope that they can bring it back. Jack Earing, Scott Smith, players again who haven't really been able to do it consistently, and then they've taken a chance on some young players. Players, Aloni from Watford, Aloni from Norwich. We don't know a great deal about Lewis Shipley. This doesn't feel in line, in my mind, with the kind of recruitment that we've seen from Barrow in the past, and it maybe suggests, I think, at the start of a turn in the way that they operate. So even though I'm still positive about Wing, right now this looks like a much, much poorer squad than the one we saw them finish with last season, and as such, I can see them drifting towards the bottom end of League Two, having previously thought they were a side that could challenge upwards.
Barrow's big butts.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going for.
18th, we've got our second relegated League One team. It's Cambridge United. They spent 4 seasons at the level, and they were some great seasons as well. That first one under Mark Bonner in particular. Brilliant league finish, brilliant cup run. Everything was hunky-dory. We've talked a lot about League One clubs that achieve promotion from League Two without big budgets, and how difficult it is for them to sustain it over a period of time, because the squad that takes you up into League One generally keeps you there and sometimes is around mid-table level. And then those players are starting to get picked off if they've performed again by clubs with bigger budgets. And then you have to recruit, and suddenly you're a small fish in a big pond, and it can be really, really difficult. I truly believe that Cambridge just suffered from that sort of pyramid gravity, as I would call it, and indeed they were relegated at the end of last season. But they've got a new badge, they've got a brand refresh, and we know from this time last summer that can be pretty powerful, actually. Probably more importantly, What Badgett, what a brand refresh it was too, George. Probably more importantly, they've got Neil Harris, something we don't have, who I think is a really underrated EFL manager.
We've had Mark Bonner, and they've got him too.
That's true. Neil Harris is boss, I guess, maybe. Yeah. Director of football, sporting director.
To know the working relationship.
The dynamic.
Do you think Neil Harris will call him the boss?
I would have thought so. Respectful guy. And an underrated manager, Neil Harris, for sure. I kind of can't really believe he's in League Two. Again, last time in League Two, he was being sacked by Gillingham, who must regret that, given that things did not get better for them in the subsequent seasons. Harris made it into League One with Cambridge. Then he jumped up to the Championship with Millwall, did a fairly good job, and then left Millwall and is now back in League Two with Cambridge. It's been a wild few years for Harris. He's the only major positive for me right here. And so the question is, how much is a manager that I think is pretty good for this level and underrated overall, how much is that worth here? Are Harris's standards able to be matched by a squad that I think is really poor? And by the budget, which seemingly doesn't look much better than mid to low level League Two immediately. They're basically, in my eyes, they're basically relying on there being no hangover, because perhaps Harris's arrival at the end of last season and the things he was able to do over the course of the first few months, maybe that acts as like aspirin for what might be a hangover. Maybe they're through the worst of it, and maybe, things are just starting to turn. They're thinking about some hair of the dog and getting going again. But for me, they just look very light on refreshment to the squad, and I think they need that. I don't particularly like the additions. Eastwood, the goalkeeper, Ben Purrington, Don Ball, Zach Bradshaw, Ben Knight. I don't think there's many sure things in there. Ball should be a solid midfield option at the level if he can stay fit. And that stat again, the last 3 seasons, 12 relegated teams from League One, 10 have finished in the bottom half. No one expects this, but a tricky return to League Two level from League One is standard, basically. And I think Cambridge will finish around the 18th mark. That's where we've got them, George.
Yeah, in 17th, we've got Accrington Stanley, who you and I, we both put them 17th, but both of us were pretty positive about their chances. And I think they've been written off by a fair few as being relegation candidates. I think if we look at the odds, they're third favourites for relegation with Sky Bet. And I just don't really see it. Like, I know that last season they finished just outside the bottom 2. Last season came at the end of a pretty tumultuous time for Accrington Stanley, and John Dooling came in and we weren't entirely sure what to expect. And I think safety, given they were looking pretty relegation threatened for much of last season, was a job well done.
Yeah.
They're one of the weirder ones where they're one of the biggest data outliers in the whole of the EFL. Like, their numbers, especially in the second half last season, were really strong. Like, not just kind of good, they were posting really, really good numbers at the back end of last season. A positive XG goal difference, which is surprising for a side that finishes that low. And they're one of the easiest teams to assess because not much has happened. Jay Batty and Whitmarsh have gone back on their loans from Blackburn and Saints respectively. Otherwise, they're pretty much unscathed. They've gone out and they've signed a couple of players in non-league.
They love the National League
and
North.
They're very good at this. Yeah, Sass and Sinclair come in. We can probably expect them to be quite good because their other signings from non-league have been pretty good. But it's more when you look at the squad, it's just very obvious to see that they're rock solid, especially when you're looking from a defensive perspective. Like Ward, Rawson and Love, all really solid. Woodson, Crawley in midfield, very good. Wally is still offering a lot at age 37. Maybe goals is where you're looking for where they might struggle. Walton.
Yeah, but I can help with that as well. I really think that Tyler Walton is going to take a leap this season. Last year was his first season at this level. A lot of these guys are turning pro and full-time for the first time, including the 2 summer signings as well that you mentioned. And I think that it's a lot to handle in your first season. And I like a lot of what I saw from Walton. I think he stepped up really well physically. He's got a great work rate. His shot locations suggest that he understands how and where to score goals from. He is quite quick. He's decent in the air. He's really someone I've got earmarked to take a big leap in terms of goal output this season.
And I think I'm right in saying last season was his first season playing up front, having been a winger at Southport as well. So it makes sense that he's learning on the job too. So yeah, like it just, they were trending in the right way at the back end of last season. They've kept all their key players. They brought in a couple that probably don't have to be good for them to have to improve. It just all feels quite settled.
Yeah.
And I think we saw enough from Doolin last season to suggest that he's capable, and that's kind of all you need. So Yeah, I'm surprised about the negativity around Accrington Stanley. It feels like a whole, they finished low down last season. It's Accrington. They're probably going to struggle again. I don't think they will.
What I find really interesting here when it comes to Aki is I'm completely on the same page as you, much more positive than maybe I expected heading into the research. And I just highlighted one thing that just seems like the most basic thing in the world, but I think could be really powerful for them. And that is, why did they underperform decent XG numbers so much? Their save percentage across two keepers, Kelly and Kralin, was 56.8%. So they conceded not that much less than 1 in every 2 shots on target they faced. It's the lowest in the EFL by miles. If Ollie Wright, 22-year-old who they've brought in on loan from Southampton, if he can be even a league average goalkeeper when it comes to shot stopping, and they're broadly the same level, although we think they might get better, that alone will keep the goal column much healthier.
That is great analysis.
Thank you very much. Tell me about Bromley, George. We got them in 16th after what was quite an impressive debut campaign last time.
Yeah. I was reading actually an interview this morning with Cameron Congreve, who's the loanee from Swansea, who was a bit of a revelation for them. And he's gone back to Swansea. He did an interview with the Swansea website about his time there, and he said that he was really frustrated, and basically everyone at the club thought they should have finished in the top 7, which would have been an incredible achievement for them in their first season in the EFL. And they did incredibly well. Like from the outset, Andy Woodman, I think, is rock solid in terms of what we can expect from him. The style of football, I think, means there is a pretty high floor in terms of them being really solid defensively, being really, really efficient from set pieces. And they've got 2 players with kind of big main character energy. Michael Cheek up front, who ended up the season with the League 2 top goal scorer, and Omar Shomi at centre-back, who is a big meaty centre-back who will score a lot of goals from set pieces. And having those 2 in the team means I think there is a level where you can be fairly confident they're going to be okay. Some concerns, though. The aforementioned Congreve, who, by the looks of things, is going to be part of Swansea's squad in the Championship this season, and Danny Imre, who's gone out on loan again from Palace, but rather than going to Bromley, he's gone to high-spending Blackpool, who have aspirations to get out of League One. I basically think they had, at the very worst, 2 top League One players playing on either flank last season, and they're gone. Right, I mean, as you say, they will make signings between now and the end of the window for sure, but right now, their only right-sided player in the whole squad is Carl Jenkinson, which is quite fun. Not a sentence I thought I'd say about Bromley.
Mitch Pinnock could probably play over there out of push, and his delivery for Cheek should be pretty...
for sure. Pinnock
sexy.
comes in, but I would say his best days are probably no longer, and certainly physically I don't think he's offering too much. Hondamark comes in, an old friend of the pods, who
Go on, Will.
Has shown flashes of kind of ability, but again isn't someone you'd necessarily get overly excited about. I'm not too negative. I just worry about the impact of having those 2 players taken out of their team, and think that they did do incredibly well to finish where they finished last season. And I'd be surprised if they were knocking on the door again before. I mean, they finished 11th, so only picked them 5 places lower this time around.
And finishing above them, we've got Oldham, who themselves are stepping up from the National League. They won the playoffs, having finished 5th in the National League last season. That was ending a 34-year wait for a promotion. It can't be many clubs in this here pyramid waiting that long for any sort of promotion. But I think that means, and by all accounts, this is Oldham revitalised. This is not the Oldham that were relegated a few years ago with so many issues off the field. This is a club that's coming back into the EFL, almost unrecognisable from the club that left. And that's really exciting. Kieran, who's an Oldham fan on NTT20 squad, he says, we're a proper club now, investment made in all areas of the club to maximise performance on and off the pitch. Boundary Park's an enjoyable place to be with plenty of facilities for fans to eat and drink before and after the game. Crowd numbers are up. Went Northern Irish for a second there. The club's back on the up, and I just think that's lovely. I want to celebrate that. So we're really buzzing to have Oldham back. They've lost some key players actually from their promotion push. James Norwood scored an amazing goal at Wembley. He's joined Fleetwood. They've lost defenders in Raglan and Kitching, midfielders in Lundstrom, and the excellent young talent Younger Nathan on loan from Barnsley. But they've been really front-footed in their approach. They're not sticking. They're twisting a little bit. Donovan Daniels and Jake Leake at the back have come in. Midfielders in the form of Ryan Woods, Tom Pett, Kai Payne, who's a youngster on loan from Wigan that was there for a month last season, and the fans loved him. They're buzzing that he's back. And then I think a switch of formation from a 3 at the back with wing-backs to 4-3-3 or similar, because 5 wide options, basically. Luke Hannant, Kieran Morris, Josh Hawkes, a load of players basically that have already played for Mickey Mellon before, mainly at Tranmere. But also Jack Stevens is probably the one I'm most excited about. He's a former Oxford United Youth Academy product who had to drop down into non-league, and basically Andy Wing brought him back up because he was with Banbury United, then he was with Solihull.
And Wingy would have been his youth team coach at Oxford as well.
There you go. Why did he not join Barrow? He's joined Oldham instead. Scored a lot of goals off the left for Solihull last season. So, yeah, I think they've got decent attacking and midfield options. I couldn't really tell you much about the defence at this point. It just feels hard to imagine they'll be bad under Mellon. I don't really know where to place them. We're going with 15th. Quite an old squad. Reminds me a bit of that Chesterfield squad from last season, and that might give them some creakiness over a long campaign. But Oldham back in the EFL. Welcome back. 15th, we reckon. And above them, Tranmere, Mickey Mellon's old team. Half of their team now plays for Oldham. They finished 20th last season, so this would be a leap of 6 places, and that's because of Andy Crosby's impact last season. Picking up off Nigel Adkins, he was just absolutely brilliant. They flew up the table. The results were good. The underlying numbers were good. Sorted out the defence first and foremost. Just really encouraging stuff. And obviously the next test is for that to continue ahead of a new season. A necessary refresh of the squad, I think, for Tranmere. Lost a lot of guys that have been there for quite a few years in Davies and Hendry, Merry, Wood, Norris, Hawkes, Morris. And they've brought in guys like Nathan Smith from Port Vale, who Crosby's worked with before. I think he'll be exactly what they need at the back. Bit more legs around him. Really excited to have Ethan Bristow back in the EFL. Surprised that, given how good I thought he was for Tranmere when he got that move to Minnesota United, it just hasn't gone well at all. So he's back at the club where it worked well before. Midfield reinforcements. Richie Smallwood's in to provide that nous. Played almost every minute for Bradford last season. Still very good at the level. I think Noan Kenna is an interesting young player as well who might provide a bit of bite and legs around Smallwood. But they've not improved personnel at all in attack. And that's the key area where Tranmere have to improve. They were terrible going forward last season.
What about our transfer exclusive yesterday?
That's true. That's true. Taylor Harris on loan from Luton. We had that scoop. And maybe I should rip the whole thing up, stick him up the table. Yeah, I find it hard to imagine them scoring a lot of goals, but I think the improvement defensively will be impactful. There's just that slight concern that the Palioses still own the club, and the relationship between them and the fans really broke down last season. It doesn't appear like the proposed or rumoured takeover is going ahead anytime soon. And that's just the sort of thing that has the potential to make things harder for the team if there is that breakdown off the pitch. But we got them down as an improver, up in 14th, Tranmere.
Now, in 13th, we have Fleetwood Town, and this is one that I'm worried about. I'm worried that this is too low. I'm worried that we've got this wrong. This is the first one when I'm like, But
you spent all season telling me and anyone who would listen that Fleetwood were way better than their league position suggested. And then we sit down for the 1-24s and they're 13th with a manager that we love.
And transfers that I like. Yeah, so let's
going on?
Let's get into this. Fleetwood are the team, for me, some clubs seem to, for whatever reason, either continually outperform their data or underperform their data. And at the moment, Fleetwood are the ones who continually underperform their data. Like by any metric in their relegation season from League One, they're a mid-table side. Mm-hmm. They got relegated. Last season, they started the season unbelievably well and looked really, as in from a data perspective, and looked like they were the real deal under Charlie Adam. And then the results and the numbers slipped. Charlie Adam was sacked. Pete Wild came in. For moments at the back end of last season, they thrashed a couple of teams. I think they scored 4 goals consecutively away from home in 2 games. We were like, here we go. And then at the back end of the season, they started to slide again. Pete Wild is someone who comes in and I think offers massive stability and like a knowledge that they are going to play a low margin, no nonsense. Like we are going to have a solid defensive foundation and we aren't going to concede many goals. And I think they have the players to do that really effectively with, because they have in James Bolton, who's a centre-back that I really like, who was fit all last season, played really well. They brought in Toby Malarkey, who I think is really, really solid too. They've got Sean Rooney, who plays a right-back, who's a really good defensive-minded right-back. When I was kind of going through the squad, I started to wonder how they're going to set up and how they're going to play, because the back end of last season they played with 4 at the back under Pete Wild, but they've gone out and they've recruited Denver Hume, who is a left-sided player who was phenomenal at Grimsby, a brilliant left peg, really creative from that left side, but they don't really have any wingers. So I'm assuming they're going to play, and they brought in more centre-backs. I'm assuming they're going to switch to a kind of a 3-5-2 of sorts.
Sounds amazing.
In which case it's Hume on the left. Mm-hmm. And is it Rooney on the right?
Currently Sean Rooney on the right.
Okay, so like...
I could see him scoring 7 goals from back post headers from Hume deliveries.
He's got to get up and down to do that.
Like, he'll be fine. He just gets up. He doesn't have to get back.
The midfield is good. Like Bond's good, Helm good, Virtue good, Neil good. Like that's all good. And they brought in goals. So like Ryan Graydon and Ronan Coughlin offer a lot going forward, but not necessarily the most prolific, nor would pure goalsman. Has he still got it? We're going to find out. Will Davis is a really interesting sign, like a target man profile. He scored 18 goals last season for Sutton. You know, I like what they've done there, where they've gone to non-league. They brought one guy who's done it at the level, and they brought another guy who could be anything, could be way better, and could be someone they sell on for more. So yeah, it kind of all looks good. But I am still confused. I think they need more quality in wide areas before I'm willing to really commit. And I do think, even though I like the Davis and Norwood signings on paper, I wouldn't say either of them are necessarily guarantees, especially with talk about Norwood kind of coming to the club injured too. So yeah, they're the ones where we've got them 13th. It wouldn't surprise me at all if after 2 weeks I'm saying this is the team that are going to win the league.
George Ellick at war with himself over the last few minutes. Let's move into the top half next. In 12th, we got a team who, honestly, across all three leagues, are probably the one for me. That could finish first, could finish 24th. I could believe whatever you tell me, George. So 12th feels apt.
It's funny you say that, because with Crawley Town, 2 or 3 seasons ago, we thought they were going to be okay. They nearly got relegated. We then had them bottom. They got promoted. Yeah, I mean, who knows?
We had them bottom last season in League One. They almost stayed up.
They almost stayed up. I mean, last season, I would say, was actually kind of incredible. Where they're probably one of the worst promoted teams in terms of like points tally and certainly underlying numbers that we've ever seen. They lost all their team after getting promoted. They lost their manager a couple of months into the season, and yet they still recruited incredibly well and made a pretty good fist at staying up. They came down, and again, most of their best players, I would say, have gone. Russian Hepburn Murphy has moved to MK Dons. Jeremy Kelly, who was an inspired signing, has gone back to play in the USA and again, not in the MLS. Julia Cortina has gone as well. Kamari Doyle has gone. Bradley Ibrahim has gone. Liam Fraser, their centre midfielder, he left yesterday to go to Reading. So yet again, all that really kind of innovative, smart recruitment, or not all of it, but most of it, has been taken away from them after a good season. Crucially, they have Scott Lindsay back managing the football club. He is the person who led them up out of League Two in the first place. He then left last season to go to MK Dons, where things went terribly. And I just have no idea where I stand with Scott Lindsay, where on one hand, I respect him immensely for what he has done and the job that he has done at Crawley and the job that he did at Crawley Town. But there's also the big red flag, which is MK Dons were like horrendous, like unbelievably bad. I can't really think of a team that had that much talent in their team and been so much worse than the sum of their parts. Mm-hmm. And also and I know people get bored about it, but like the numbers in that promotion season were poor. And Corey Adai had statistically one of the most insane seasons we've ever seen as a goalkeeper. Defensively,
as a unit, not very impressive.
Yeah, so if Scott Lindsay is able to recreate that team from 2 years ago, which would be some cool, are they going to have a keeper that his goals prevented numbers like 15 or whatever it was that season? Probably not. So I don't know. Like, they bring in Harry McCurdy, who what's he done for the last 2 or 3 seasons? Mm-hmm. Like, he ended up last season at Bromley, didn't do a great deal, but he's the kind of player that I could kind of imagine at Crawley suddenly kind of catches fire. Dion Pereira was supposedly very good at Dagenham Redbridge last season in the National League.
How about Reece Brown, who was once in the League Two team of the season, but didn't play for any club for the whole of last season?
Mad. Tishmanga is one who scored a lot of goals at National League level, who you kind of feel, given what happened with Danilo Orsi 2 seasons ago, Danilo Orsi, who had a good goal scoring record in non-league but hadn't done it in the EFL. Then Lindsay kind of turned him into this elite goal scorer, well, prolific goal scorer at least. Kyle Scott is the latest US recruit, of which we assume, given how good they are shopping in those waters, that he'll probably be quite good.
So it's cheeky from them because Preston Johnson, who's one of the leading faces of the... Was. Let me get on to it.
Sorry, you said is.
Who has been one of the sort of leading faces of Wagme United, who have owned Crawley over the last few years, has just stepped down, and very explicitly in stepping down said big reason is because the club don't want to do the funky, data-driven, worldwide recruitment that they've been doing for the last few years, and he thought it was best if he wasn't there, which suggests that they're basically going like a bit more standard, and I would suggest potentially all in on Scott Lindsay. But we thought that recruitment was pretty good all told.
Yeah, really good. But then they've gone out and, is Carl Scott, is that Scott Lindsay? I mean, Danny Cashman probably is. A couple of amazing seasons at Worthing in non-league. Yeah, I don't really know. Flint, who was out for most of the season, having started really well, he's someone who'll be a big player for them. Charlie Bark had his first season in the EFL last season and was really impressive. Jay Williams comes back to the club after a similarly disappointing spell at MK Dons as his boss, Scott Lindsay, and he follows him back. I just don't know. It kind of feels like one of those things where if you ignore the noise, you're like, yeah, I kind of like it. It's like Lindsay, and there's some good players there already, but there are too many red flags just to totally ignore. And I agree with you that they could be good again. Like they were good last season. They're probably better last season than we thought they were going to be. Or is it all going to start to turn? And they're another one of these relegated sides. We know that relegated sides struggle when they come down. So could finish first, could finish 24th, and let's put them 12th.
The best case scenario is intoxicating.
Yeah.
And I do think they could play some really sexy football. Let's see how we go. Crawley bang in mid-table, which reflects basically the range of what we could see happening there. Gills, we got 11th. Gillingham finished 17th last season, so this would be a jump up of 6 places. Got Gareth Ainsworth as their manager, of course. Came in towards the end of last season. And it was one of those where, like, he made a very clear and instant impact in making them very hard to beat. Now, they still struggled to win games. They still struggled to score goals. But Ainsworth came in, and a team that had underperformed, flattered to deceive for ages, over a season and a half, suddenly couldn't be beaten, essentially. And I think that's a pretty good start. Can they score more than a goal a game? That's a low bar, but they haven't achieved it for 4 straight seasons. The most goals they've scored in a league season, 46, but in 3 occasions it's been less than that. That's a pretty low bar. Not much squad churn here, partly because over the last few years, Gillingham have sort of carried themselves as quite a bullish, ambitious team in League Two when it comes to recruitment. But it's been quite poor recruitment, and it hasn't led to them building successful teams. I think when that happens over the course of a few seasons, you can actually kind of cause yourself issues because it's hard to shift players who have either inflated or large wages for the level, but have also underperformed and are probably on longer term contracts than most of this level. So I'm not sure there's been as much movement in the market as you might have wanted here, given their underperformance over 2 seasons. But I think there is a lot for Ainsworth to work with. A lot of strikers and a lot that should succeed in a direct style, whether it's Sam Vokes, who he's brought in, probably mainly to be a mentor, but a mentor for 2 young strikers in Seb Palmer-Holden, who they've brought in permanently, and Joseph Boddy as well, who's a young player that broke into the first team. Both of them really exciting young striker profiles. Solid centre mids, solid centre backs, wing backs in Hutton and Clark that I think can contribute in attack, although they probably need some more depth there. I'm pretty up for a big improvement in results for Gillingham and for them to just be a bit more of a serious football team for a while. I just want to see a manager see out a season.
Funny thing about this is that this, in our minds, is quite a positive prediction. Yet they are third favourites for promotion with Sky.
Really?
Like they are seen as being, I think, because of, it's always the way, because Brad Gaddison spent a lot of money, there's investment there. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if
I had my positive voice on.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have been a bit more, well, sorry, but we're not sure about the top 3
Gills fans listening to you, like talking them up, saying they're going to come 9th, thinking like, who's this joker?
11th.
Sorry.
Who's 10th, George?
Notts County. And I'm sure there will be a sharp intake of breath from Notts County fans, because last season, Stuart Maynard took Notts County to the semi-finals of the playoffs, and then they lost over 2 legs to FC Wimbledon, and he was sacked. And there were very few tears amongst the county fan base about that. And this is one of those really interesting cases where you and I, as neutrals, look at that as, I think, being very harsh. But they're fans who go and watch it every week. We're united in thinking that he wasn't really up to the job. And I think we're going to learn quite quickly whether, who was right effectively. Like, was Maynard having a positive impact or a negative one? Again, he took over a side that, yes, they chronically underachieved this season before, but ended up finishing languishing kind of down in the nether reaches of the table. So it's all changed this time around. Martin Patterson comes in. We know him as formerly being Mike Duff's assistant when Mike Duff was having real success. And also he was manager of Burton Albion, where he played a role in keeping Burton Albion up 2 seasons ago. But wasn't, it wasn't the most exciting reign necessarily. And he was appointed at the end of a really long recruitment process to hire Maynard. Long enough that I'm going to stick my neck out and say that he maybe wasn't the first choice to do so. There's also, if you're someone who only listens to these pods and doesn't really keep on top of what happens in the EFL over the summer, when he was appointed, along with Andy Edwards and Sam Slocum, his 2 assistants, there were eyebrows raised with the statement which said that Edwards, Slocum and Patterson will join our owners, that's the quote, in a newly formed technical board, which will meet regularly to discuss football strategy, team and player performance, data insights, and other matters. They will share views relating to tactical approach and team selection, red flag, taking into account such as player fitness and readiness, data modelling and opposition analysis. Post-match meetings will take place, enabling the coaching team to explain in-game decisions for a data-led review of the match to be presented. All of this is quite weird because, as I said in a pod earlier in the summer, this feels like stuff that probably kind of goes on at most clubs, like reviews of decision making, data analysis. Yet they've come out as if they're kind of reinventing the wheel and we're going to do this, and this is going to be kind of in part like a team effort, but in part we are going to be analysing Martin Paterson's decisions every single day, and he's going to have to present to us why he's making them, and we know better than him. This feels to me like a bit of a recipe for disaster for loads of reasons. Firstly, managers like autonomy. They don't like their decisions to be called into question consistently. And secondly, it gives the fans and people like us a massive stick to beat them with. Where if things start badly, it's going to be like, well, this is blown up in their face immediately. You've also got the loss of David McGoldrick, who to my mind is still or was still one of the best players in League Two. And the fact that even at his age, he has moved up to League One with Barnsley, I think says how good he's been. Having said that, I think having someone like him who is so dominant in terms of always wanting to get the ball to him, relatively selfish on the ball, takes a lot of shots, sometimes that kind of player coming out can be better for the cohesive unity of a group, albeit George Abbott in midfield is definitely a miss. And Alex Bass, who was their number one keeper last season, has also moved on. The arrival of Ollie Norburn suggests they're going to kind of continue to play that possession-based passing game. Keller Roos, nice to know that he still exists.
Lovely.
He's come into playing goal for them. Matthew Dennis, I think, could offer something for a good team. I think he's had a difficult time, but certainly physically, he's a decent player. And Barry Cotter comes in, he'll be solid at right back. So
I think Jody Jones is fit, which is nice.
Yeah, when he's fit, he's good.
Yeah,
he might get 57 assists again.
Yeah.
Basically, I think it's okay. Like I think it's pretty good. I just think two or three key men leaving, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if the management appointment and the general way that they've adopted this could prove to be an issue rather than a new bold way to approach strategy.
Yes. Grimsby. We got them in 9th. That's exactly where they finished last season. And you know what? That was an impressive finish for Grimsby, and it was a good season. Now, they did overperform their underlying numbers fairly significantly, and I think their -6 goal difference in finishing 9th tells a bit of a story there. They flirted with the playoffs until they didn't, and it just was quite a volatile team last season. They had some incredible performances, often away from home, but also flattered to deceive on a number of occasions. They haven't lost loads, albeit Denver Hume was a very important creator for them last season, scored a lot of assists and was basically their best ball progressor in possession and creator from set pieces and open play. So they've lost Hume. They've clearly gone out and identified a few positions where they really wanted to improve. In replacing Hume, they've signed a couple of lefty defenders, Jaden Sweeney being one of them, Reece Staunton another. They've got a new number one in Christy Pym, who at this level has been a pretty dependable pair of hands, even if he wasn't great in League One last season. And then some kind of wildcard stuff with Justin Amaluza stepping up from the National League, a pacey winger, Jay's Cabia as well, and Zach Gilzenan, who you spoke about on the pod a couple of weeks ago. He's got an incredible background. La Masia, Liverpool, Blackburn Rovers, and now we wait and see whether he can... Exactly. The three big dogs of European football on his youth CV, and now he just needs to adapt physically to become a senior player and could be really, really exciting. And Dave Artell's really, really exciting as well. A really strong tenure up to this point. Everyone's bought in. And the last time he was in this sort of situation, it went very, very well. That was with Crewe, where he had a year, 2 years to get his feet under the table, mould things into the way that he wanted them to look. And then they were sensational and won promotion in 2020. And they were really exciting to watch in attack. And I think this Grimsby team have a bit of work to do to get consistent going forward, but could be a really entertaining team to watch as well. So I think the club is in a good place. I think it's a together club. I think they're building towards something rather than going down the short-term route, and I do like that overall. We don't have them jumping up any higher than last season because of the clubs that we think will finish above them. But the best-case scenario, again, like all the teams in this part of the table, the best-case scenario is very attractive. We're just finding it difficult to get full buy-in on Grimsby, 9th place finish.
In 8th, just missing out on a playoff spot again, we have Salford.
Just like they did last season.
Exactly. And just like Carl Robinson has done a few times in his managerial career, he's very good at getting a team either just to creep into the playoffs or just to fall away. And I think part of that is because, as is the case with some managers, he is streaky, where I can pretty much guarantee you there will be a point this season where Salford are one of the best, if not the best team in the league. It'll last 7 or 8 games and they'll be untouchable. I can pretty much guarantee you there'll be a period of the season where Salford can't pick up a point and are really poor. And it's hard to get to the very top of the table if you're going to have a long losing run. Walsall just about managed it and then threw it away. And it's hard to be down towards the bottom if you're going to have a spell where you're really, really good. And maybe because of the kind of relentless attacking style that Robinson tries to employ, and the, I guess, creative freedom he gives his players, it's no surprise that sometimes when it clicks, it's really good, but sometimes it can kind of get a bit ragged if you come up against teams who kind of work it out. In terms of their playing squad, quite a lot of churn. And, everyone remembers the back end of last season, it was announced that Gary Neville and David Beckham had found new investors for Salford. I think there may have been early murmurs that there was going to be a kind of mass spend, and it hasn't really been the case. It's kind of more of the same. But they've lost a lot of really good loan players, like Forner and Kouassi are both going to be playing League One football next season. Stefan Negri was a really important player for them. He's currently back at Oxford. I assume he'll go out again. I assume they're probably trying to do it again, but I would have thought he'd be hoping for a League One loan. Okoronkwo too was a player that played a lot of minutes. Hakeem Adelican, probably their best player last season, has done what he did this time last year, where he's not signed a new deal and decided to turn up for training with the kind of free agents.
Considering his options.
Yeah. I assume he just has a number. And he's like, until someone hits this number, I'm gonna play with the PFA free agents team, and someone will probably hit it. Maybe it'll be Salford again, but as of right now, it isn't. And he's a massive miss in terms of his goal scoring exploits, which I think over the last couple of years, certainly last season, he showed that the form at Donny wasn't a flash in the pan the season before. George Grant should be really good. I think. Yes. He comes in from Hearts. He is a ball player, but he's scrappy. He wins the ball effectively. He's a good set piece taker. I said in our pod last week, he kind of reminds me of Cameron Brannigan in terms of having both the ability to break up play really effectively, but also launch attacks, be creative, score goals. And another really impressive signing is Oluwu, who comes in from Barnet, who is seemingly the most important defender that Barnet had last season in their promotion out of the National League. And given Barnet's own ambitions, and we haven't discussed them yet, being able to take him on is impressive. And reading people who know much more about non-league football than we do, they also like Callum Cisse, who's coming from Wealdstone as well, and Jaybird, who has promised a lot in the past.
Incredible intonation there. Jaybird. Jaybird. Jaybird.
Tweet. He looked really good. I mean, he's always kind of threatened to look good in the past. We had a loan in Rochdale back in the last season where I watched his goals back and he looked really, really sharp. And I think he will offer them a new dimension going forward. And then today, at time of recording, Matty Young, so yesterday, if you're listening to this on Friday,
big
Matty Young signs, who was their keeper back in the last season, really, really good keeper, signs on loan from Sunderland. So it feels like they kind of mitigated the losses fairly well. They've got a lot of young players in Osama Ashley, Kelly Namai, who are still there. Stockton now has competition with Bird up front. So there's a lot to like. But they've still lost Adelican, they've still lost Negru, they've still lost a couple of other key players in Forner, and it's still Carl. And I'm, even though I'm excited by them, I think they might be really good. I can't get away from those just little concerns, and that's why we don't have them in the top 7.
Right, into the playoff places now. This is when things get super interesting. Colchester United, they didn't make it last season. Having basically got into the playoffs with an incredible second half of the season, they then fell away when it mattered most. They finished 10th, didn't convert that playoff flirtation into anything more than that, but it was still a huge improvement on what had come before. And that improvement comes in the form of Danny Cowley and his brother Nicky. It just seems to fit. It just seems to work. The best case scenario for the Cowleys in Colchester is playing out in front of our eyes. And so I see more improvement for the club. And I was pretty hot on them before last season. They didn't quite make my strong stance look really smart start, but I think in the run that they had, and in particular the amount of clean sheets that they racked up over the whole season, did suggest that this is a pretty serious team with a very, very high floor, because they're just always going to be excellent out of possession, excellent defensive record. They lost McDonnell, who was a really important loanee for them, who's pitched up in League One now, and Fiacre Kelleher, who is less important, I think it's fair to say. It's evolution rather than revolution in terms of their incomings. Ben Perry, I think, looks like a really good McDonnell replacement in terms of midfield legs. Jack Tucker rejoins, having been on loan last season. I guess currently looks like he'll be the starting centre-back alongside Tom Flanagan. And Will Goodwin's a really interesting one on loan from Oxford, someone who scored some goals for Cheltenham a couple of seasons ago, looked like exactly the sort of big, burly, goal-scoring number 9 that is all the rage across the leagues at the moment, and basically hasn't played for Oxford because of injury for 18 months. Got to stay fit, and if he does, could be pretty good.
I think he'll be good, yeah. I mean, he went on loan to Wigan last season and they absolutely hated him, but that was because he got injured basically straight away. I think there is a really good player in there, and I think the Cowley's a good place for him. I just hope he stays fit.
Yeah, so Samson Tavide, really exciting young striker as well. His future seems a bit up in the air. Lots of interest in him from higher up the pyramid, one to keep an eye on. But I basically just see this as a team with a very solid defence, a great goalkeeper in Matt Macey, midfield that looks strong, Bishop, Payne, Reed, all still there, all offer plenty. You've got speedy wingers like Edwards and Gordon and Thorne. You've got Goodwin and Lyle Taylor if he re-signs, and Tavide currently up top. And yeah, they look a bit light at centre-back as we record, but I'm confident they'll sign some centre-backs, so that's not going to be the case. They're unlikely to be high scorers, I think it's fair to say, but a good comparison would be Wimbledon last season. I think Colchester might have the best defence, or one of the best defences in the league. Wimbledon went up with that being the case, only scoring 56 goals. You can build a playoff campaign based on a solid defence and not much more than that, and I think that's what Colchester will do. So we got them in 7th. In 6th, Swindon Town. Now, in footballing terms, purely what I'm going to see on the pitch this season, I think they are in my top 5 clubs to follow as a neutral. And I'm really, really excited by what might happen. I think Swindon are basically Vibes FC in League 2 right now, along with Crawley. They finished 12th last season. They finished strongly because Ian Holloway came in towards the end of 2024 and really got something going. They were the 4th best team in League 2 from the 1st of January and scored the most goals in that time. And that's with a background of pretty strong fan protests around the time Holloway was appointed. It was, from a managerial point of view, a really impressive impact that he had. They haven't lost a huge amount from last season as we record. Sobowale, Freckleton, Shimanga, Cotterill, who was a decent loanee, and he's brought in kind of a mixture of older players like Tom Nichols, who returns, Darren Oldacre, Jimmy Ball, Billy Bowden, and then a load of kind of younger wild cards as well. And that's kind of the squad. It's got some really exciting young players, in particular Botan Amin, a young attacker that has a lot of interest from Championship and League One clubs. He's only got one more year left on his deal, but Holloway basically wants him to star in League 2 for Swindon and then see what happens after that. And I hope that will happen. Obviously, Harry Smith up top is someone that I expect to do really well. Other young players like Joel McGregor and Kirkman, 2 fullbacks on either side, I'm really excited about. And then Jake Tabor, who's this non-league goal-scoring sensation that has jumped up like 15 tiers.
Tabor or Tabor?
Holloway called him Tabor in his post-match interview. They beat Chippenham 5-1 in a friendly. Holloway was spitting.
I hope he's
furious.
not really Taboring for us.
Tabor, I wouldn't have thought so. I think he might score some goals. I love Kilkenny in midfield. Got players like Glatzel and Butterworth and Drynan who could feasibly kick on and contribute to a good attacking team. There's a small sense that it could all blow up when it comes to Swindon because of, off-field unhappiness and we've seen it once or twice before with Holloway, particularly at Grimsby. But I think they could be a very fun and quite a serious team as well. And Holloway's really got his teeth into it. I'm buying in. Swindon, 6th. Imagine that, George. Swindon in 6th. What fun that would be. Wouldn't it? You'd love that, wouldn't you? We'd love that. Go on.
I'm not saying anything. I didn't have them 6th. Right. Walsall next up in 5th. Walsall, if you agree with us and you think Walsall will finish in the top 7, having done so last season, they are joint best price in the market with Sky Bet at 13-8 to do so. So perceived as less than a 50% chance. This is one. Well, I'm going to come out and bat for Matt Sadler because I feel like this guy has had to deal with some real, horrible 6 months effectively and a lot of criticism. And I still maintain that the team that he built this time last year to be as good as they were was, yeah, of course, Nathan Lowe was brilliant. And, certain players, Jamie Jellis being one of them, kind of rose in terms of their profile over the course of that first 6 months. But Sadler built that team with his recruitment team and turned it into a winning machine. And even though the results massively turned, I'm a broken record on this, but the numbers stayed good. And let's not forget that over 2 legs against Chesterfield in the playoff semi-finals, having gone through what they went through, where they thought they were promoted, they put on an absolute masterclass, having not won many games since January, and they beat Chesterfield over 2 legs and did so pretty convincingly. And in doing so, Albert Adoma with one of the greatest assists that the world has ever seen. Matt Sadler's stock is low, and you made the point to me when we were going through this that if he gets off to a bad start, he's probably going to get sacked, and I don't disagree with that at all. But I'm willing to buy Matt Sadler stock, and I think yet again he will build a really effective side. And I think the fact that they've lost a lot of players, given how good they were last season, isn't necessarily the worst thing, because there was obviously, if you do it again with the same bunch who've been through what they've been through, there's going to be some scar tissue, isn't there? Surely. Ryan Sturck was a big player for them last season. He's moved on. Simpkin in goal was obviously quality, and he's moved on too. George Hall, Alfie Chang, all these loans have gone. And McKenty at centre back, Taylor Allen's gone, Gordon's gone, Akagbu's gone. They've been gutted of that team effectively.
Made some good money in the process.
Yeah, and I really like a lot of the players that they brought in. I think Vincent Harper at left back is a really good signing, someone who'll progress them well up the left-hand side. It's hard to imagine what happened last season would have happened had Aidan Flint been playing centre-back for them. Mm-hmm. And he will be next season, someone who we know offers a massive threat in the opposition box, but also a big, burly defender. They brought in 2 strikers to replace Lowe. I think in Aaron Presley you have someone who we know isn't going to be prolific like Lowe was.
It could be time. I think this might be, for the first time in ages, a really good fit for Presley.
Yeah, but he is someone who
But I've said it before.
We know he's going to offer. He is physical. He is someone that you can hit. He's someone that can score goals. And then they've taken a chance on a kid called Johnny Stuttle from Bournemouth on loan, who their fans are very excited about. He's one of those guys that scored 79 goals in 20 games for Bournemouth youth teams. That's not the exact number, but something like that. But he's one of those guys, and he scored in pre-season and took it well. And what I like what they've done here is it feels like they've been right, let's go and see if we can find the next Nathan Lowe and Johnny Stuttle. But let's also go and get someone who is ours and isn't going to be recalled in January. And if Stuttle isn't good, we know that he's an effective League 2 player. They're short in midfield, but they've still got Lakin and they've still got Jellis. And, yes, they kind of had to completely rebuild the defensive unit, but I think in Sadler, we've got a guy who we know is able to do that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. I still think Walsall were one of the best 3 teams in the league last season throughout. And if they basically pick up from where they were for the first 6 months of last season, and we again see them as this side who are very, very hard to beat and who've kind of cracked football to an extent, I don't think, I think it's hard to get away from the results at the back end of last season. And I don't want to be accused of shenanigans by the Walsall fans, but I think the real Walsall was what we saw in the first half, not the second half.
Right. They are a very, very interesting team ahead of next season. We've got them in 5th. In 4th, we have one of the favourites for promotion, a team that came down from League One last season. Not a relegation that they were in any way expecting. Bristol Rovers, George, it couldn't have gone much worse for them last season. We've got them, compared to those coming down with them, doing pretty well in finishing 4th. But I wonder if their fans might be aiming a little higher.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, again, we know that it's not easy to bounce back up. What I would say about last season is I think sacking Matt Taylor was not necessarily the mistake, but I think the appointment of Inigo Calderon has to go down as one of the worst EFL appointments I can really remember. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be harsh on him. I think it's more a case of, for the task that was at hand, in order to try and make sure this was, I think when you appoint a rookie manager, you don't want to do it after a really poor start to a season, in the middle of a season, effectively. You want to give them time to kind of grow into the job and understand what they're doing. And he tried to implement a style of football that didn't really suit the team at all. And we saw this kind of slow death as they got worse and worse through the season and ended up getting relegated, in part because of Burton's really, really good form under Gary Bowyer. Again, who do you appoint in that kind of situation? Do you go out and get a Bowyer, or do you go out and get a Calderon? There's no way they should have been relegated. That's the key thing with them. With Crawley, with Cambridge, with Shrewsbury, you could kind of see it coming in terms of the squad and where their budget was. There's no way this Bristol Rovers team should have been relegated. And they come down, therefore, with loads of quality. Connor Taylor at the back, Isaac Hutchinson, who at this level before for Walsall has been dominant, and then two strikers in Realtor Sotirio and Promise Machere, who offer very different skill sets, but both very effective. Shaq Ford as well, who we've seen been good in terms of players coming in. Taylor Moore should be very good for the level. Jack Sparks at left back as well. Luke Southwood in goal. Josh McEachran, someone whose technical ability means if he's got runners around him, he should be fine. Will Camille Conte still be at the club next season? At the moment, he is. There's been rumours that he shouldn't be. There's absolutely no way he should be playing League Two football. And if he is still there, that should mitigate the lack of physicality that maybe McEachran has. And then Darryl Clark comes back, someone who, and I do not in any way think the whole never go back thing bears any like relevance or weight or anything else. Like, I think Clark has had success there in the past. He's had success elsewhere. He's taken Port Vale out of this league after their relegation. He did an okay job at Barnsley for a time before it kind of got worse. When he left, it got even worse.
Don't forget the great job at Cheltenham.
And then Cheltenham, of course, where he came into a side who was struggling and he completely turned them around. Like, I think he is a good manager. Bristol Rovers fans know him and know his technique and know the way that he works. Fans get behind him. They're the ones for me who, out of the relegated sides, could and should have a chance of going back up to League One at the first time of asking. 3
automatic promotion places in League Two and in third. Playing in the EFL for the first time since 2018, Barnet, National League champions last season, back at this level. And we reckon going straight through to League One. Dean Brennan is their manager. Interesting story there in that he joined the club as director of football to Harry Kuehl, who was the head coach. Now Brennan's in charge, and it was a good decision because he has reinvented this football club on the pitch. Ryan Deeney is a legend of NTT20 squad and a National League connoisseur. Some stats, courtesy of Ryan. Barnet last season in the National League, over 100 points, over 30 league wins. Scored the most, conceded the least. Unbeaten at home, had the best first half record, also the joint most points won after the 75th minute. They had the most clean sheets with 22. The most games scoring 3 goals or more, 19. The best record coming from behind. The best XG for. The best XG against. The most shots, the most successful dribbles, the most box entries, the best PPDA, and the most points against top half sides by 8 points in the National League. George, we are very bullish on Barnet. This just looks like an exceptional football team.
I'm most excited about seeing Barnet than any other National League promoted side before, I think. And what's weird is
we've had some good ones.
Yeah, and we have had some really good ones. But what's weird is you look at Stockport and Wrexham, Salford, Chesterfield. They all came up and were immediately put in, and Notts County, as one of the favourites to win the league. Yet with Barnet, for whatever reason, despite them being like wholly dominant and their points tally being 102, I think it was, in the National League last season, isn't really the case. Like, they are currently with Sky Bet 18-1 to win the league, and I can't really understand why. Like, yeah, of course the quality of the National League might be weaker last season, but then if that's the case and they finish 30 points above Oldham, then how bad are Oldham if they're going to be there? I mean, we don't think they are. There's lots to like, I think, in terms of their playing squads. There are some that we know from players where they brought in. Who we know from the EFL. Ollie Hawkins is someone who, obviously offers that kind of target man threat up top. Romany Critchlow as well. Players they've got in their squads who are back in the EFL. Dennis Adeniran, Emmanuel Osadebi come in. Players such as Ryan Glover and Idris Kanu, who've thrived for them in the National League. Really excited to see Glover. Anthony Hartigan, who was obviously a kind of bit of a star boy at AFC Wimbledon, putting the strings in midfield. And what's crucial, like, they've lost Oluwo, who's the player who's gone to Salford, and that seems like a big loss. But apart from that, it's a really settled side.
Yeah.
A side who'll be well drilled, who know what they're doing, with a couple of choice additions. They've also signed 3 players from Halifax, which is quite fun. Halifax just providing players for the EFL, as seen when Pete Wild did the same when he left there and went to Barrow. But yeah, I just think they are a team who, if they're to maintain their National League form, and there seems no reason why they wouldn't, given the precedence for top National League sides being really good League Two sides, I cannot understand why they aren't being perceived as one of the likeliest teams to win promotion out of the league.
I'd like to express my intense interest in Callum Stead. who is an attacking midfielder that scored 18.
Sadly, no relation to John, I checked.
Really?
Nah.
He's his own man instead.
Correct.
18 goals and 8 assists, 26 goal contributions, no pens from an attacking midfield role. Hello, Callum Stead.
Callum Stead for you, Ryan Glover for me. Let's see who does better.
Okay. Let's do that. MK Dons, favourites for the title. We've got them finishing second instead. This would be a jump up of 17 league positions. Lest we forget, MK finished 19th last season. It was a horror show of a season. Much was expected of them, and they just failed on a footballing level. But clearly, a lot has changed in the summer to mean that people are very bullish about them, including us. We do think they'll be automatically promoted. Paul Warne is the manager, something of a promotion specialist with Rotherham in League One, and now managing MK in League Two. His appointment suggests a big revamp in the way that this team will play. They have, for a couple of years, been a Russell Martin-y, Liam Manning-y, Mike Williamson-y possession-based team for the most part, and now they move away from that. Paul Warne will have them incredibly fit, very well drilled, really intense out of possession, and will attack with speed. They will also attack with a lot of quality because their transfer business this summer is what's really caught the eye. Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, probably a championship level player right now, playing for MK on the wing.
He loves playing for Warney.
Aaron Collins scored plenty of goals for Bolton in League One the last 2 seasons, drops down in his prime to play for MK. Russian Hepburn Murphy had a really strong season for Crawley last season, drops down to play for MK. Gethin Jones, Bolton stalwart, really dependable defender, plays for MK Dons now. And the best of the lot for me, Will Collar, who they've signed from Stockport to play in the centre of the park. It's incredibly eye-catching, this group of individuals that they've signed. And there's already quite a few in the building who, again, all on paper, it's all on paper, it looks so strong, doesn't it?
But that's what's so confusing is that, as you say, on paper, before those players came in, MK Dons probably had the best squad in the league, like in terms of what players have done in the past. And it wasn't that long ago, under Mike Williamson in the second half of the season before last, they looked really strong and looked for a time that they're going to finish in the top 3 before having that crazy game against Crawley. They've got Tomlinson, a left back, Alex Gilby, who's obviously a massive attacking force from central midfield, Liam Kelly, who knits it all together at the base of midfield. They brought in Dan Crowley in January, who should be a brilliant League Two player, obviously came in at a time where they were really struggling. Lemon Hay Evans, Scott Hogan came in, Callum Hendry up top as well. Like, the depth was already there. I must admit, when the spending spree started, when Mendez-Lang came in, when there's rumours about Collins, when Gethin Jones came in, I probably thought more would be in by now. And I thought their starting 11 maybe would look a little bit more League Two All-Stars or even League One All-Stars than it does. And I'm also a little bit concerned that before this summer, the recruitment plan and the way the squad is being built was for managers to play in an entirely different way to Paul Warne. And I mentioned this before, like Paul Warne at Derby, the physicality of some of his players changed whilst he was there. Like, you know, they turned into like speedy, fast players would suddenly kind of bulk out and become different. Kane Wilson being a prime example of that. And will that work with this squad? Has it had enough time for that to work with this squad?
Is Dan Crowley about to get absolutely jacked?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Can't wait to see
Liam
it.
Kelly?
Yeah. Benching 200 pounds.
So that's my one concern is what I wouldn't be surprised to happen at MK is if things maybe don't start great. And almost it was kind of what happened with him at Derby, and then they kind of get used to his methods and the style of football, and they improve as the season goes on, and therefore make a late run into the top 3. But there's every chance as well that they're just way too good for everybody and roll them over. Yeah,
I share some of the concerns, to be honest. Football's not just about transfers, and it's quite good to remind ourselves of that around this time of year every year. And I think people do get a little blinded sometimes. Success and team success is as much about culture as it is about individual names on paper. And MK's culture was clearly lacking last season, and it's why they spiraled to the extent that they did. Now, Paul Warne is known as one of the great culture guys, right? Really motivational as a man manager, an incredible guy that players really, really want to do well for. So it could be that he just fixes that straight away because he knows what to do. But sometimes it can be too much for one individual, as impressive as they can be, to overcome and overturn a whole culture at a club. And so there's a lot of work to do here. And I guess I'm making the point that you shouldn't necessarily just be blinded by exciting names, but to an extent we have been, because we've got them finishing second. I think this could be one of those. We saw it with Bristol Rovers, didn't we, when they won promotion? One of those where they might not be first, second, third for a few months, but I reckon from January onwards, a couple more additions, things start to click and they really fly and they make it. But there's a team that have a lot less distance to travel to go from where they were to where we think they'll be. That's Chesterfield. We've got Chesterfield winning League Two this season, George, under Paul Cook. Why don't you tell me why? Well,
I mean, they came up from the National League fancied, and for much of last season, they were very, very good. Injuries played a huge part in the reason why they ended up only sneaking into the top 7. But at their best, they were incredibly strong. And again, they're one of these teams where throughout the season, their underlying numbers are very strong, and their numbers at the end of the season in particular were very strong. And they actually ended up going off favourites for the League Two playoffs. There's a continuity throughout the squad that I think is important. Like, they're a known quantity in terms of being a really good League Two side, who, when they didn't have injuries, were very, very good. Metcalf, his loan is over, and Oldacre, who played a lot of minutes last season, moved on. But apart from that, there's no one really. Dylan Markandé is back, which is massive. A huge player for them, who was on loan from Blackburn first half of the season. He was then recalled and sent out to Orient, where he didn't necessarily perform. They've got him back on a permanent deal, a 3-year deal, which is huge. And Lee Bonus is someone I'm really excited to see. Someone who scored a lot of goals for Larne in Northern Ireland. He's been in Ado Den Haag recently and scored some goals over there as well. Reports are generally pretty good. But you look at the spine of their team and it's so solid. Grimes, Naylor, Banks, Grigg. Like, these are players who you can kind of depend on. And then, of course, there's not just Markandé in terms of being the diminutive, skillful attacking player. You've got Armando Dobra, who is also very reliable in terms of his attacking force. And then in Paul Cook, a manager who we know is eminently capable of sorting this out and is incredibly popular at Chesterfield. And it was interesting last season how normally, I think, when a team as good as Chesterfield only sneak into the playoffs, there would be some criticism around him. But I think the Chesterfield fans understood how bad those injuries got and what a good job Cook did in order to kind of keep the ship able to keep going towards the playoffs and finishing there too. So, you know, it's kind of we've got MK Dons. We've got the new kids on the block in Barnet. MK Dons, the flashy one, but like Chesterfield are just the continuity candidate, the safe ones who, like, you know, it's more of the same. If they carry on doing what they were doing previously, they'll be okay.
They have lowered the average age with their summer signings. I think that was crucial. The injuries, as you mentioned last season, it's not a stretch to suggest that was tied to the incredibly high average age of that squad. It'll be a vibrant attacking team. We can be absolutely sure about that. Very confident and clear in how they play with great players for the level. It all bodes pretty well. Would love to see 1 or 2 centre-backs signed. Can we trust Dunkley, Grimes and McFadden to be fit for enough games? Tom Naylor filling in always feels suboptimal because he's good in midfield. I just can't see them not being in the top 3. I see them a bit like Donny last season, who we picked to win the league. The quality team in the league, as I see it, who get it done and dominate most games and pick up a lot of points. They are, with Sky Bet, second favourites for the title. They are 7-1. That price, as with the others quoted on this show, correct as of the time of recording. And also, you know, betting is for over 18s only. And anyone who's listening to this who's thinking of placing a bet on this market or any other, and please make sure you are gamble aware and head to begambleaware.org to brush up on the risks that come with gambling. So Chesterfield, our League Two title winners for the upcoming season. What do you think about that? And who are yours? Let us know in the comments on YouTube or on Spotify. We got MK Dons and Barnet automatically promoted with them in the playoff places. Bristol Rovers, Walsall, Swindon and Colchester. And then in 8th, Salford, then Grimsby and Notts County. 11th, Gillingham, 12th, Crawley, 13th, Fleetwood, 14th, Tranmere, 15th, Oldham, 16th, Bromley, 17th, Accrington. 24 is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
18th is Cambridge, Barrow in 19th, Harrogate 20th, Crewe Alex 21st, Shrewsbury 22nd, and the bottom 2, Cheltenham in 23rd and Newport in 24th.
Broke into song in mid-table there.
George is still thinking about that Fleetwood pick. We would love to hear from you. What do you think about these 1 to 24s? Thank you for listening. Thank you to Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fans Funds, sponsors of Not the Top 20 on this show and throughout the 25-26 season. Wherever you're listening to or watching this, there's one for League One ready for you to listen to. Cheers. Go well.